please. Yes, please spank me. Huh? Intellectually spank me, please, Alex O'Connor. Please, I want Stockholm Syndrome because the atheist arguments are good.
British atheist, he's got his squibby quabbles and a wibby wobble. Oh, golly gobbers. Oh, blumdy-dumby Bumbledore. He bumble-dummed me Dumbledore.
There's an 11-minute video about free will. And then there's a full... I guess let's try this. Let's see what happens here. I don't know if I'll be able to stomach this whole thing, right? I mean, I feel like this is going to be tough. But we'll listen to some of it because so many people requested it. Let's hear and let's see if the argumentation is any good. I don't have high hopes. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. The thing with Ben Shapiro is that he has a history, I think, of owning the college libs, which is like anybody with any philosophical knowledge could own any college lib, right? I mean, that's like super low-hanging fruit. I'm not saying it is totally pointless to go after low-hanging fruit, but has Ben Shapiro actually debated anyone substantial that I'm not aware of? I think maybe William Lane Craig or something. I guess that counts. But we all know that all these people very selectively choose who they will debate because there's a lot at stake, I think, right? I mean, I think Ben Shapiro's big enough a name that even if he lost a debate or two, it's not going to do anything, right? But for a lot of people, people are like, when are you going to debate Sam Harris? When are you going to debate Dick Dawkins? That'll never happen, dummy. Like, those people are never going to have a debate with me. I would have that debate, but it's just not ever going to happen. There's way too much for them to lose and absolutely nothing for them to gain, right? Because this is still, we still on the come up over here, right? We're not big time. We're still, our star is still rising, dog. So what's the point of debating a dude with 100,000 followers if you've got, 2 million, 5 million, 6 million, whatever followers? There's no advantage to it. So it's like people have no idea how things actually work, right? Now, it did actually work when people asked Matt Dillahunty like 100 times or more over a span of 3 or 4 years, right? Eventually he did agree to a debate. And the same thing happened with Stefan Molyneux. So many people asked Stefan to do a debate that it eventually just happened, right? So over time, I think people will maybe agree to it if you're kind of in the same like rough domain, right? Like Stefan had a much larger audience, but we were kind of in the same, adjacent circles of argumentation and debate. I don't know anybody in Cosmic Skeptics circles. I don't know anybody in Ben Shapiro circles. So, I mean, this kind of a debate would never happen. I mean, it would be a very long shot, right?
Yes, if there is no God, there is no free will. But I think that's because of the truth of the latter of those statements. That I suppose the biggest criticism that I've made of you in a video response that I made to the atheist delusion, and this show does seem to have an extraordinary capacity for putting me face to face with people that I've been talking smack about online. So thanks again.
By the way, I should say it's a great video, and everybody should watch it if they haven't.
Well, I'm going to put that in the description. I think that glowing.
So wait a minute. If I talk smack about Ben Shapiro, does that mean I'll get a face to face debate? What if I did the whole debate? Doing the impression of Ben Shapiro? Like, what if I did the whole debate that way? I think then it would be very logical, be very plausible. Definitely, could I do an impression of Ben Shapiro to his face, and then would I get on Daily Wire? Is that something that we could guarantee? Will this happen?
Dawson. The principal disagreement that I think I had with you, Ben, is that there was a subtle, or not so subtle, implication, in my view, that yes, with no God, there's no free will. But somehow having God can solve this problem. I mean, you said a moment ago that you don't think you can establish God's existence through reason alone, but assuming that you do believe in the existence of free will.
Wouldn't you love to see Alex O'Connor come up against Tag, I mean, this guy would completely collapse into a soy puddle, which he already is. I mean, I think he's given up veganism. Remember when he was like all championing veganism? I think he was chosen, by the way, to be kind of the Dawkins successor. I think they did a podcast together. So, Richard was like,
Esther, I need a successor. You, my child, will be my successor.
right. So Dawkins has an offspring goblin here in this character. But first of all, again, this guy would melt at Tag. He wouldn't last 5 minutes with that kind of an argument. So would Ben Shapiro too, by the way. But I'm worried that Ben Shapiro is not going to bring out the biggest guns that you can when somebody says there's no such thing as free will, because this is the repeat of my debate with JF, and we know how that debate went. Everybody remembers that one. So if Ben Shapiro's a quality debater, I would look for him to bring that nuclear strength argument out. But most of these people, I hate to, I mean, this is what you guys are presented with as like high intellectual stuff. And for people that like, Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, or people like myself, people that studied this stuff in college and grad school and whatever, like, it's funny because, and I don't mean it in an arrogant way, like this stuff is really low tier. And okay, that's why it's popular. Sure. That's why so it's sad though, because the level of the discourse that happens in the popular sphere is so low tier that it's really just a disservice to everybody. And that's the sad part. But you can't really talk about, if you talk about that, then people think, oh, you're just salty and jealous. You're jealous of Alex O'Connor. You're jealous of Ben Shapiro. And it's like, I mean, imagine if a lot of you guys are musicians out there, right? And you got guitar bros that are like Yngwie Malmsteen, and they can do freaking algorithms on their guitar somehow, right? And when they hear, Katy Perry songs or something like that, or like a garbage pop song, right? And then the audience, the popular people are like, that's the most crazy, awesome pop song I ever heard. And then the Yngwie Malmsteen guitar genius or person is over there, and they're like, or the classical trained musician is like, that's not even music. Right? Even if the classically trained person is not that good at music, they can still recognize and say, this is low tier stuff, man. So for those, it's the same thing in philosophy. When you look at this stuff, you hear this stuff, and it's like, it's amazing because like the level of argument they're having is the kind of thing that would be had in a philosophy 101 class. Everybody who's been in a philosophy 101 class, there's going to be some like super low tier debate about determinism and free will. Okay, which is, again, this is like the kind of discussion you have in philosophy 101. But I mean, the public is just so like out to lunch, and I mean, again, it's like I'm just going to say it very simply for you guys. The people that are presented to you as sophisticated public intellectuals are intentionally given to you because it's low tier stuff. That's what I'm trying to say to you. And if you doubt me on that, I can't help you, because it's a fact and you're probably never going to get it. So just forget it.
I think it's a real thing that you have.
Yes.
And simultaneously saying that if there is no God, then free will makes no sense.
Yes.
That does read to me like an argument for God's existence, such that in order to either say that there is free will, in order to say that there is free will, one must believe in God. And that does strike me as an argument for God's existence.
I mean, to slightly curve that, or to kind of sand off the rough edges there, I would say that the argument I made is an argument for something extra natural.
Sure.
Now, you can call that God or not God, but the thing that I'm making the argument for is that you cannot get from a materialist Darwinist universe to free will. That is not possible. So I know that the way you solve that is that you...
Okay, so I would disagree with this idea that what I called it is above the natural. Well, that would be supernatural. He says whether you call it supernatural or not, well, that would be supernatural if it's above the natural. But yes, so that's a little weak already. But then to move to the point that really a Darwinian mechanistic universe would, remove the possibility of free will in this reductionist naturalist account. That's correct. So hopefully he can sustain this argument.
Say that there is no free will.
That's right.
And what I'm saying to you is you don't act that way.
I hear this all the time. People.
Now that is true. That's actually oftentimes a way that we argue in TAG, is that we point out that a lot of atheist argumentation says something, they act as if they believe that, but then they don't actually believe that. I do think it's a powerful rhetorical point. It's a good moral point, but in their worldview, they can just say, yeah, but I don't have to live I can live contrary to what I actually think is the case, right? So I think there's value in calling this out, but it's limited in its usefulness, and there's a lot stronger directions that you can go. So I hope he continues to press in a stronger way, but it does have a good rhetorical value to point this out.
Say, look, you may say there's no free will, but you don't act as though that's the case. I suppose that I'm just confused as to what it would look like for somebody to act as if they believe there was no free will. I mean, the very argument that there is no free will that I subscribe to, at least one of the various forms that it takes, is a sort of Schopenhauerian view that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will, and that you are essentially just a biological.
Well, I'm very sus. I doubt that he's actually read Schopenhauer, but even if that were the case, let's listen to what he claimed it was again.
View that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will.
So I can do what I will, but I can't will what I will. Well, number one, remember he's a determinist, so you're not actually willing. And so he's probably going to bite the bullet and say that, yeah, free will is an illusion, it's illusory, but I'm going to continue to live in my illusion as if I have free will. So that's probably what he's going to say.
And that you,
of course, that's not going to do him any good, because it's not going to give you any account of ethics at all. He's going to have to surrender ethics. Remember, this was a guy who a year or two ago was vehemently arguing that veganism was a universal ethical requirement. Remember, that's the goober we're talking about here.
are essentially just a biological machine reacting to its to its internal and evolutionary drives. That's what's happening now.
You're just a biological machine reacting to internal drives. Now, he's given on a silver platter a complete dismantling opportunity for Ben Shapiro. So hopefully Ben Shapiro has caught that plate of dismantling feasting that he just offered up, because just like my debate with JF, he doesn't even understand. The atheist makes a fool of himself. He doesn't even see that all of his argumentation has just been negated and canceled out and disqualified by that proposition that he just put on a platter. Because now it means that everything he's saying is no longer an argument, but merely a determined chemical reaction and process. Did you catch that? Because he now believes in a dysteleological universe, a universe with no purpose. Therefore, there is no such thing as truth and falsehood in a chaotic, meaningless, purposeless universe. And so, therefore, none of his decisions are truth-directed. None of his propositions are truth-directed. They are merely the irrational effects of a chemical reaction in a chaotic process that is determined. So he did not actually choose the true over the false, because there is no choosing. And low IQ atheists are always like, but he still chose, even if it's determined, he still chose the true. He didn't choose anything. There's no he. There's no he there choosing. But he still was determined to choose the true. No, he wasn't. There is no he. There is no choosing. There is no true. Because you've equalized the true and the false, the good and the bad. They're all just what is.
Call that nihilistic if you like, that's a separate question. But as to the question of how this would make one act.
Actually, if it's a nihilistic ethic, it's not a separate question. It's the very thing in question, dummy.
The idea that this might cause us to sort of lay around in bed all day or something. The very mechanism that I think is responsible for eliminating the possibility of free will, that is, the drives that make people do what they do, like I say, do exactly that. Make people do what they do. They make them get out of bed in the morning. Why do you get out of bed and go and make your breakfast if there's no free will? So you go and get breakfast because there's no free will and something is driving you to do that that's outside of your control.
For sure. So to get back to the nihilism point, which you kind of put aside, so that means that this conversation is essentially worthless in any sort of real sense. I mean,
Yes, there we go. Ben Shapiro's correct here. This is the very point that was made to JF in our debate. So he's on the right road here. I'm a little surprised. Not that I don't think Ben Shapiro is a dumb person. I think he's a smart person. So I'm not saying that he can't do a good debate. I mean, we've all heard him owning the 20-year-old college goobers, which again, anyone with half a sense of reality and truth and an IQ above room temperature can own those people. But he is going down the right road of argumentation that I would go down. So he gets a point for that.
Effectively, we were driven here by evolutionary biology and environment to have this conversation. Everybody who's watching this is driven by evolutionary biology and environment to have a particular reaction to that thing, and ever round the cycle goes. That seems like a very purposeless life. Maybe again, I'm drawing from a realm that is not evolutionarily biologically connected. The word purpose is really, teleology obviously has been taken out of the realm of science pretty thoroughly by
That's all correct. Ben Shapiro is correct here, and this is the right type of argumentation. When you heard me say that the universe is dysteleological, I'm saying the same thing he's saying there. That's just a fancy term for no purpose. Teleology being the idea of purpose in the world, in nature, in our actions, in terms of the whole universe having a telos or a purpose. Hence, because God created it, it has meaning. Meaning makes sense in that universe. Meaning does not make sense and is impossible in a deterministic universe. So this is the right direction.
Atheists and by many people in the sciences, although I would argue that, again, most scientists speak in the realm of teleology literally all the time, and they're borrowing language from the language of teleology, even when they're describing functions of particular body parts, right? The heart pumps blood in order to keep you alive, right? They're constantly using language that's teleological in nature. The real question that I have, and this is what goes to the question that you were asking at the beginning, before the sort of pre-question question, which was the good of religion to society. One of those goods is people believing that their free will matters and this actually is a useful thing. So I believe that it is deeply important for people in society to believe that they have the capacity to change themselves.
Like already from the outset, the way the debate's framed is kind of a losing proposition. The debate is not free will and determinism. The debate is titled, is religion good for society? First of all, there's no such thing as religion, as if all the different religions are part of this overall worshiping of deities and of a generic natural theology God. There's true religion and false religion. But there's no such thing as like generic religion. And the question is already out of whack, because in order to know if religion is good for society or not, we need to know what the good is. But the very question itself gets that out of order by assuming that you have some criteria of the good by which to judge the religion. But religion, or metaphysics and theology, is the basis for and the grounding for the good. So it's a dumb way to propose the debate. But of course, this is the type of religion or debate that, like, normies love this type of framing of the debate, right? But it's all backwards, and it's ignoring the nuclear strength apologetic that we could have, which is to turn the tables and ask Alex O'Connor and Ben Shapiro as well, okay, what is the good and what is the basis for your criteria, your grounding, your judging, your benchmark for the good here? Because that's what's already presupposed, and nobody's even asking the question, which is like philosophy 101, to ask, well, what is the good? So how are you going to judge whether religion's good for society without first determining how you know what the good is?
And to make different decisions than what biology would drive them to do. So you say, well, it's biology that drives you to get out of bed in the morning, which is almost Calvinist in sort of the way that it's described, right? It's like you're predestined to get out of bed.
he's actually correct in that analogy that the mechanistic Darwinian naturalist universe really just took Calvinism and smushed it into the mechanistic process of the universe itself. And there is actually, I think, some validity to that historical account that people give. That out of the Enlightenment, a lot of the Scottish, Enlightenment philosophers like David Hume and others, right? What was the theology existing at that time throughout Scotland? Scottish Covenanter Calvinism. What do the Puritans believe? Puritanical, James Edwards, radical, extreme, occasionalist version of predestination. So, yeah, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to naturalistic predetermination. So once the Puritans and the Enlightenment, the New Light Presbyterians and all those people had ditched the Trinity and ditched miracles, they went from Unitarianism to straight up naturalistic determinism. Yeah. Hop, skip, and a jump, logical progression. So he's actually correct.
In the morning, so thus you get out of bed in the morning. But the reality is that we are constantly making decisions as though those decisions make a difference in the universe. And what social science actually does tend to show is that when people believe that they have control over their own actions, that when they believe that they're capable of changing the way that they live, they do make those changes with more alacrity and in better directions than if they don't believe that. If people tend to believe in a deterministic universe.
This whole argument about people do better when they believe this really is irrelevant if the question is about what's true and what's false. So again, the misnamed premise of this debate, is religion good for society, is just the wrong-headed way to have the debate. It's a question of what's true and what's false. Not, is it good for me, right? I mean, the whole framing of it's like an Enlightenment, utilitarian pleasure principle. What do I get out of this? Is it good for me? Do it make me do good and feel good? I mean, might as well make the topic of the debate, does religion make people feel good? I mean, it's equivalent to, is it good for society? Do it make me feel good? Do it give warm fuzzy? Well, that's a dumb way to have that debate. It doesn't make any sense. Does the religion make me feel good? I mean, it might, but what does that have to do with whether it's true or false? I don't know. If I was asked to come have this debate, I would be like, well, the framing of the debate itself doesn't make any sense. Is religion good for society? I would say that presupposes that we know what the good is. Maybe we should debate what is the good, right?
Universe.
But remember, almost nobody studies metaphysics. Almost nobody knows what these terms are, what these things mean. Almost nobody knows informal fallacies. So it's like, you're just, it's like the conversation that we have with James Sexton, right? And he's a highly intelligent person, obviously. He knows all kinds of stuff I don't know about. He's an expert in law and all that, sure. But being an expert in law and the ways of the world and all this, like none of that had any it didn't grant any advantage to whether or not the argument was fallacious, whether or not what was being argued was true or false.
They do act worse. So it may.
So it's like the constant frustration that I experience is that we're talking about stuff that are, what can I liken it to? Imagine we're mechanics. And we know everything about the structure and makeup of a car. We know all the parts, how they go together. This thing over here, this runs this thing. This lubricates this other thing to make this thing go, to make this thing go. And it's just like this super complex, mobile computer that rolls down the road. And we know all about it, right? And so everybody else rides in cars and drives cars, but they don't know anything about the inner workings of the car, right? So when somebody says, let's have a discussion of cars. And by the car, I don't mean this in some arrogant way, like the car is God and I know everything about God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the domain of laws of thought and argumentation and debate. That's what I'm talking about here. And metaphysics and the basics of philosophy, right? The car's philosophy here, not knowing everything about God for all you piety goons in the audience. And so everybody else is like driving around in the car, and they don't care about the inner workings of the car, right? And so when we go to talk to these people about cars, and I say, tell me what you think of the workings of a car, what do most people say? Oh, yeah, dude, you're talking about my Bugatti, and it run fast. Put oil in, put gas in, it go quick. Right, that's what people are thinking. Cool car, drive fast. Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla. And I'm thinking, engine, ignition, part, all this guy. Like, that's what I'm thinking of when I think of cars. So when we have this conversation, I say, yes, and I don't know shit about cars, so I'm trying to make this analogy work. But I don't know anything about cars. Yes, my friend, what do you think of the drive shaft and its components, the way that they connect to the ignition? Car go fast, right? They don't know what you're talking about. The heck's a drive shaft? I don't know. Shaft. Oh, yeah. Shaft, right? Well, I don't know what a drive shaft is. Car go fast. Car look cool. Car get chick, right? That's what most people are thinking about cars. We're not thinking about the workings and the components, right? And it's like most people, it's imagine, well, the car works because you could just put liquid inside of it and it go. So any liquid can go in? Or are there rules to what liquids you can put in the car to make it go? It's the same with argumentation, with logic, with epistemology. You can't just say anything and make argument go. But people can't get this. It's just like, it's two different languages. When I say car, I'm thinking of the drive shaft and all these stupid parts and components, and this thing ignites and causes a chemical reaction, and that runs this thing, and this goes through this part, and everyone else is just thinking car go fast. Okay, so fine, car go fast, but there's rules to car go fast. Like, you can't just put bug juice, right? You can't put Purplesaurus Rex in the gas tank and it runs, right? You can't just push accelerator and it go through wall. No, it doesn't go. That thing doesn't go through walls. There's rules about. There's things that govern the logic of that car. It doesn't go through walls. I mean, you could try to go through a wall, but car no go fast when you go through wall, right? But no one thinks of the laws of thought and argumentation this way. But they're the same. There's rules to it. And everybody already kind of knows this, because if I were to imagine I were having a conversation, or you've all experienced this with relatives. You're at the Thanksgiving turkey dinner and you're violating all the rules of propriety and wisdom and arguing with your pervert uncle about whether or not there's conspiracies. You think it's an inside job? I ought to take your ass to the strip club and set you straight, boy. You dumb. Yeah. Right? Does your uncle know the laws of argumentation and logic? Of course not. And what does he say? Your uncle, drunk uncle says, 9/11 ain't an inside job because that don't feel right to me. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but how it feels to you, Uncle Jimmy, don't mean nothing. It doesn't mean squat, dude. That's a dumb argument. If you tell Uncle Jimmy that's a dumb argument, he's going to set his Doral cigarette down, and he's going to set his Michelob Light down, and he's going to take that mason ring and give you a nice little indentation across your jaw. Because it's a Thanksgiving brawl. Don't argue with your drunk uncle. But drunk uncle's a great example of like what types of fallacies most people are going to churn out, right? That's not an argument. That's just a spit out phrase. What if and then I turn around to drunk uncle and I say, drunk uncle, your arguments are false because your door rails suck. My door rails don't suck. I've been smoking this since I was 16. Only got emphysema and cancer 4 times. What are you talking about? He would see, even he would know that's a bad argument. So everyone knows deep down, even drunk uncle knows deep down, Uncle Jimmy, he knows there's bad arguments. And yet, even though we all kind of know this and sense it deep down, it's kind of obvious. Everyone just acts as if there are no laws of thought. There are no laws of logic. There's no laws of argumentation. There's no rules to any of this. It's all just arbitrary. It's all made up. And debating is just a demonstration of will to power. It's just power dynamics and being flashy and being silver-tongued and saying quick things and shutting people down. That's like destiny debate, right? Talking fast, that kind of thing. Which Ben Shapiro does that too, right? But Ben Shapiro can actually kind of debate, it seems like, right? He's kind of an actual sort of debater. I mean, again, I've not watched a lot of Ben Shapiro. I've seen the viral clips everybody has seen of this or that owning of the lib, from 5 or 6 years ago or whatever. But he's actually making a good argument here.
This is going to be sort of Straussian in its implications, but that may work for you. You're a very high IQ individual who can somehow reconcile the idea of living a very purposeful life with the idea that actually there's no purpose to anything. But for the vast majority of people, that is not actually how they live. And I would suggest that even in your daily life, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, man, my biology is driving me this morning to get on the bike, have a great day, the sun is shining, that's my biology.
Well, that's true, but the debate needs to go out of the whole domain of what helps people and what makes them feel good and what's good for them and for society. Because that has nothing to do with what's true or false. Again, that might be something we can draw out as an implication of what's true and false in this debate. The whole debate is wrong-headed. I mean, how do we know what's good for society if we don't know the good? And every way that this argument goes in this discussion so far, it's already just assuming that there's a common ground idea of what the good is. So what he ought to be doing is pressing Alex O'Connor on the good, the justification for the good, and pressing the deterministic naturalist fallacy, which O'Connor has already committed to.
Biology doing this. And I don't think that most people who live purposeful lives, even if they believe that everything they're doing is predetermined by the world around them, by their own biology, I don't believe they actually feel that. They have to engage in what they themselves would term an illusion in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in their lives.
Of course, but that's what the evolutionary process, in my view, in my worldview, I should say, has done so well, is provide precisely that illusion. I mean, it's not as that...
Wait a minute. The evolutionary worldview has provided that illusion? Is that what? Let's
feel that.
Make sure he said that.
That they have to engage in what they themselves would term an illusion in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in their life.
So to have purpose and meaning, Ben Shapiro is saying, you basically have to commit yourself to the illusion of purpose and meaning in this worldview that Alex O'Connor has. So I'll make sure I heard him say this.
Of course, but that's what the evolutionary process, in my view, in my worldview, I should say, has done so well, is provide precisely that illusion. I mean,
the evolutionary worldview has what? I mean, he's like, does anyone understand? He's losing the debate on his own. He's like he's ruining himself very well. If I was Ben Shapiro, I'd be like, I'm just gonna sit back and let you talk. I just keep talking, please. Right? If I was Ben Shapiro, I'd be like, keep talking, dude. You're doing great refuting yourself because what you just said, like, what?
It's not as that. I mean, you say, look, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, gosh, look at my biological
my neurons
drive.
are firing, yeah.
Of course not, because if I did, then the whole evolutionary purpose that this illusion serves would fall away. I mean,
Did he just admit that the entire worldview that he believes is an evolutionary system that provides the illusion? But guess what? Your belief in the evolutionary system is also part of the illusion, dummy. I mean, this is like, this is not rocket science, guys. You don't even need all the philosophical, you don't need philosophical training to realize that what he said just canceled out all of his argumentation and his whole worldview. In other words, my worldview is an illusion, but it helps me to live and have meaning, to not think about how my worldview is an illusion and meaningless. So let me hear him say this again, because it's hard to believe you actually argued this. Like, are you really just destroying your own position this easily? I mean, what?
You say, look, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, gosh, look at my biological
My neurons are
drive.
firing, yeah.
Of course not, because if I did, then the whole evolutionary purpose that this illusion serves would fall away. I mean...
Oh, so my whole worldview would collapse if I were to admit what is actually the case. That my worldview isn't really meaningful or coherent. But let me live my delusion and push my delusion, even though it's complete philosophical nonsense, as I try to make arguments and use logic and argumentation to have a meaningful discourse, which Ben Shapiro, to his credit, had already pointed out would be impossible. This whole argument with itself would be impossible if Alex O'Connor's worldview were true. So Alex O'Connor showing up to make this argument proves that Alex O'Connor does not believe his own worldview, and his own worldview is nonsense and incoherence.
You say that this is a fairly purposeless life, and perhaps the implication is that it's a bit of a depressing one. I didn't come here to inspire optimism in people. I just think it is in fact the case.
By the way,
it is in fact the case that
right. So he's trying to be the edgy atheist that owns it, but you didn't own your edginess. You didn't own up to it. You didn't affirm edginess. You destroyed your whole argument, dummy. But remember what Paul says? Now, Alex O'Connor, I'm sure Cosmic Skeptic, sees himself as a very sophisticated, popular YouTuber and college graduate man. Right? In other words, atheism is not a problem of intellect, right? Because does Scripture say that the atheist is ignorant? No, it calls him a fool. Does Romans 1 say that men just don't know because they haven't done enough syllogisms and enough Aristotelian logic? They just don't know. No, it says that all men know and are guilty because they suppress the truth deep down. So deep down, Alex O'Connor almost told you that he knows his worldview is total bullshit. Because if he were to admit what it really is, the illusion of the coherence and the rationality of the evolutionary worldview and survival of the fittest and all the stuff that he thinks is meaningful falls away as an illusion and is actually meaningless. But he will not admit that because he's committed to a delusion, which is not ultimately about reasoning and intellect. It's a problem of pride. Atheism is spiritual delusion, as the church elders say. It's not an intellectual problem. Atheism is an intellectual choice that is a result of a moral problem, a spiritual problem. Do you guys see that? And why that's the case?
the world doesn't exist. And we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but as a wise man once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And I will say that the argument...
Well, wait a minute. If facts don't care about your feelings, then facts also don't care about your chosen delusions. And if your worldview is an admitted chosen delusion because it helps you to have meaning, which you already admitted it's all a lie, then all of your arguments are also delusions and lies. Oops.
Against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other.
We can build a worldview from a law of logic. Remember Matt Dillahunty? I don't know what transcendental categories are. They just are. So this is a magical, irrational faith in something that he calls a law of logic, which in his worldview doesn't even make sense. He believes in a determined, chaotic, meaningless, dysteleological universe. Presumably of pure matter. I assume he's a materialist determinist. Okay, a law of logic is not determined matter, dummy. It can't be. So what is it? Oh, it's an invariant, abstract, immaterial. Oh, but wait a minute. You don't have a basis to believe in those things. Because the same argumentation that you would use against a immaterial, invariant, unchanging God is the same argument that undercuts and destroys your belief in abstract, universal, metaphysical principles like laws of logic. Duh. This is just the Bonson-Stein debate all over again. You don't have a basis to believe in a law of logic. Laws of logic make sense in a theistic worldview. They do not make sense in your worldview. And you just admitted that it's an illusion anyway that falls away if you were to admit what's really going on at the biological level in your worldview. So basically saying all my arguments are delusions. They don't exist, but accept them because it helps me look cool on the internet, which he doesn't look cool. But anyway.
Now, this law of the excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy, we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity. And this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument and an important one.
I'm sorry, and how do you give an account for what's immaterial in your worldview as a determinist? I mean, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you guys. It's a disservice to you guys that this is what the masses are presented with as the height of intellectual sophistication is this cosmic skeptic, right? I mean, college is not a place where you're taught to rigorously, critically think. College is a place where you're indoctrinated to be churned out as an Alex O'Connor. Does that make sense?
Is that you can ask if that of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random. And you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind or inside your brain or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to rid this conversation of any implicit materialism, exterior to your...
Wait a minute. Rid the conversation of materialism. I mean, aren't you committed to that? I mean, I'm not going to grant you that you have a basis to believe in anything immaterial in your materialistic universe or worldview, which you seem to be wanting to do now that you're talking about minds and selves. Excuse me, those are metaphysics. And the same chopping block that would cut off God for you in your worldview are also going to cut off things like minds and selves and laws of logic. Do you not get this? Atheists, you guys are super low IQ. I know it's hard to get you guys to understand this, but the same chopping block that cuts God off cuts off souls, selves, consciousness, the will, the good, laws of logic. Can you not see this? And yet here you are, every time you make a sentence, assuming laws of logic, meaning, telos, etc., etc., etc. Okay, right. So now that we all admit you're doing that, we need to hear an account for that. What is your account for your use and your belief in these things, which you've already admitted, by the way, are illusions and don't work? I mean, I guess the audience is just being gaslit, I guess, and that everybody just wants to be gaslit. They want to be, lie to me, please. Yes, please spank me. Intellectually spank me, please, Alex O'Connor. Please, I want Stockholm Syndrome because the atheist arguments are good, even though deep down I know they're complete nonsense. Please, intellectually spank me. I'm a bad person.
Self. If that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate? So indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore therefore random, either of which you are completely...
Dude, Alex O'Connor is so bad at debate that Trent Horn, who is mediocre at debate, completely demolished Alex O'Connor within about 40 minutes and had him contradicting himself right away. So, like, and I'm not trying to be mean to Trent, but my honest assessment as a person who knows how to debate of the debate with Trent, I would say Trent is a mediocre debater because he miserably failed to even understand the basic critiques I was making in our natural theology debate. So I give Trent a mid-grade. And Trent demolished both Matt Dillahunty and Alex O'Connor. So what does that tell you? So this is like super low grade level argumentation. And I hope you guys can see this. So, and I get asked maybe once every week or two, when are you going to debate Cosmic Skeptic? When are you going to debate Alex O'Connor? You think I haven't asked and sent emails and sent tweets countless times to all these people? Of course. That's never going to happen. And the reason it's never going to happen is not just because he's got a bigger channel or whatever. It's because there's no reason for him to do that debate. People who have this tier of debate, I guarantee you, can sniff out who would really demolish them in a debate. So there's no reason for them to do it. What do they gain from that debate? Because the majority of the population has already figured out that they think that this is high tier debate. The debate that we would have would probably fly over the heads of most people anyway. So it's what good would that even do? And it would only draw away the smarter aspects of Alex O'Connor's audience into theism or into our camp, right? So there's really no advantages to debating people who might beat you in a debate. And I think deep down they sniff it out. They know that I better stick to people in my wheelhouse, right? That I could probably hang with. Why would I debate somebody who, has spent 20 plus years studying epistemology and metaphysics when I can have a much lower tier, much more pop-friendly debate? So again, that's explaining to you guys why would Alex O'Connor have a debate with me? Well, literally, there's no reason for him to do it. There's nothing he gains from having a debate with me.
Out of control. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything. Because you still need to, it's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately...
Well, first thing I would say is that he's basing all of this on his belief in the law of the excluded middle. But as a atheist materialist, he doesn't have any basis or justification for believing in invariant immaterial laws. So I don't know how he knows or thinks that there's such a thing as a law of excluded middle in a deterministic universe. Number two, he's already admitted that a bunch of the things that we've talked about. Now he's arguing like there are souls and minds and selves, which he has no basis for either. So I don't know why we're supposed to think that those things exist in his worldview and why he's going to use those things and appeal to those things. Unless he's a car salesman and he's selling people obvious contradictions and lies and gaslighting people, which could be the case. But it's a false, it also could be a false dialectic, right? Like his argument was that from the law of the excluded middle, all of our actions are either completely determined or totally chaotic. Well, maybe a person is a unique kind of metaphysical thing that can be influenced by different types of things. And so their choices are neither totally biologically determined nor totally random. Maybe free will is a unique metaphysical category that doesn't fit into your bizarre, arbitrary, ad hoc either or, right? And he's going to say, oh, now you're attacking on unknown and unprovable metaphysical things. Oh, yeah, exactly. Like what you just talked about for the last 5 minutes. Unknown, unprovable metaphysical things in your worldview that make no sense. Do you guys understand the strength of presuppositional apologetics? Presuppositional apologetics is an immediate IQ test to eliminate from the outset everybody mediocre and under. It is the litmus test of mediocre and under immediately being canceled out. That's the strength of it when you understand what we're talking about.
Ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control. Free will cannot exist.
Well,
and so I would be careful.
That argument does rely on the complete deconstruction of the self. Right? I mean, you're using the term self in this argument in, I think, a couple of different ways. You're saying something outside yourself, but then you're breaking down the self into a bunch of separate components as though the self is a computer. Right? As though if you took the self and you broke it down into a machine, and there's like there's the
Yeah, I like where he's going here. Like, this is the direction I would go in. I would point out all these different metaphysical terms that he's used as if they're things that he can appeal to when his worldview excludes the possibility of those things. Excludes them being coherent.
microchip, and you've got the processor, you've got all these different parts of it. So it has to be coming from here, or it has to be coming from here. But I think the very idea that we have of ourselves as selves is as a deciding being. And so the attempt to carve that down into, so which...
Yeah, this was my point. So he's saying what I was saying through an analogy. So I agree with him here.
Parts of the deciding being, that is an avoidance strategy. So I don't think that the argument quite holds.
Well, if we can call the self just a deciding being,
call it a deciding being,
then that sort of fundamental assumption that we make about the nature of the self, I don't think is going to be incompatible with atheism.
This marks the potential start of a third.
These AI ads, these deepfake ads are getting totally ridiculous, right? Like every day there's like some, it's like Michael Saylor, Donald Trump. Hello everybody, this is Dr. Phil, and the government has lied to you about the checks that you can get if you sign up here on this app, right? It's like the worst, stupidest deepfake ads ever. I get them on every video.
How so?
Because we're talking about what the self is here. I mean, atheists believe in the self. Everybody believes in the self.
Well, no,
oh my gosh. Yeah, thank you, Alex, for telling us the things that you believe in that have no basis or justification and make no sense in your worldview. That's exactly what we want to call out. We know you believe in these things and use these things and act like you're an atheist, using and believing in and basing your life around things that in your worldview don't exist. But this guy is so low IQ, he doesn't even see this.
I mean, that I find difficult to believe. Why would an atheist believe in the self? The self is a series of non...
Yeah, exactly. So Ben Shapiro is actually absolutely nailing him on the very thing I would argue.
Deciding mechanisms, as you described. I see that your view of the self is an atheist view of the self, a meatball wandering through space, as I've put it somewhat colorfully, the sort of Spinoza idea that you're a stone that's been thrown, and you can comprehend that you've been thrown, but you're a stone that's been thrown, and that's just the way that it is. Why would there be in atheist philosophy such a thing as a deciding self? The deciding being, is external to the idea of an evolutionary cause, because the very word deciding suggests uncaused decision-making.
Yeah, exactly. This is the appropriate way. So Ben Shapiro is absolutely correct the way he's critiquing this worldview. I had no idea what I was going to get when I clicked this video, and a million people said, please, not a million, but tons of people said, do the debate between Shapiro and O'Connor. Yeah, so here we are. This is the essence of the free will predestination debate or determinism debate. And Shapiro is absolutely correctly on point, calling him out as to a presuppositional internal critique of the atheist worldview, that the self makes no sense. It's arbitrary and ad hoc. But again, do atheists do anything but be arbitrary and ad hoc? No, they don't.
And you've just excluded it through your own philosophy.
Uncaused decision-making, I suppose, is a concept that I think is unintelligible, and therefore, if there is an unintelligibility.
So you notice, unless there was an edit there, no response on what the self was. The whole discussion was about now the metaphysics of the self, which O'Connor was trying to appeal to. Ben Shapiro correctly called him out on it, and he's deflecting off into some other thing. So he doesn't want to talk about that, clearly. And look at the body language. He looks like he even gets bothered by the question.
Look
at him like he's closing his eyes and like, he's like, oh shit, oh shit. I brought up self, but I already canceled out things like self in my dumb philosophy. What am I gonna do?
The very word deciding.
Look at him down bad right there.
That dude down bad. Oh, he's a British atheist. He's got his quibby quabbles and a wibby wobble. Oh, golly gubbers. Oh, blumdy-dumby Bumbledore. He bumble-dumby Dumbledore.
Suggests
He's like, uh-oh. Look at that angry eyes now. I've had enough debates, by the way, where you can begin to see in the body language of people when they're in uh-oh land. You just stepped your foot into a big pile of uh-oh shit right there.
cause decision making, and you've just excluded it through your own philosophy.
Oh, that's exactly what I would have argued.
Uncaused decision making.
Oh, let's not talk about that, and let me shift it over into some other thing, uncaused decision making. That was a pretty, again, this is the first, proper.
This is a proper debate. We're going to have a debate. It's going to be proper.
This is my first proper debate with Ben Shapiro, watching him do a proper debate, not debating a purple-haired college goblin. And I think that was actually pretty solid. I see the body language of cosmic shit pile here just melts. He sinks down and then gives him evil eyes.
It is. Why would there be in atheist philosophy such a thing as a deciding self? The deciding being, is external to the idea of an evolutionary cause, because again,
close my eyes and let me sink into myself. Let me sink into my non-existent determined self and come up with an argument. Watch the mean eyes.
The very word deciding.
Look at he's watch the angry look.
Suggests uncaused decision.
So, and I give credit to Ben Shapiro for handling it in a friendly way. Because if I was debating Alex O'Connor, we all know that I will throw in some jokes, and I put these people into a rage. When they debate with me, they get into a rage. So he wouldn't have just been giving me, evil eye, nasty look. Dude would have jumped across the table with soy rage. Well, he wouldn't have jumped across. He'd run out of the room, right? We have a rage quit, soy rage quit, estrogen rage quit. Anyway, so there you go. A lot of you said, cover this, cover this. I sound like I went into a Dr. Phil. When are you going to cover this?